Hey guys, Neo once again from the Overclocker. Today I have a DRAM kit from XPG, one of their latest in fact, which is the XPG Lancer Neon DDR5 7200. So what makes this kit different from their other Lancer memory is that the Neon range leans heavily into lighting and aesthetics. Before we get into that however, this kit is retailing for about $3,499 at Woodware, and for the US dollar pricing, well, I actually have no idea. When I wrote this, I couldn't find the kit on Amazon or Newegg. As I said before, the Lancer Neon kit is about visuals above all else. And while there are plenty good-looking memory modules on the market today, none are like the Neon kit, which offers about 60% of the heat sinks being lit up, far more than any other DRAM kit I'm aware of. Moreover, the Lancer Neon heat sinks are made out of 50% recycled material instead of the typical aluminum that you find on most high-end DRAM kits. As a result, each kit or heatsink rather has a reduced CO2 emissions footprint. I know this may not seem much or even important to many of you, but I figure if you can help out the environment in any which way you can while still getting a unique and probably very good looking kit as well at the same time, why not do it? If you're wondering about the temperatures while under heavy load because of the heatsink, well, I will admit the normal Lancer kits do run cooler, but it's not by as much as you'd expect. And why is that? Well, that's simply because XPG has used a cooling coating of sorts, which apparently reduces temperatures by up to 10% from what they would otherwise be without the coating. So what does that actually translate into real terms? Well, that's about 57 to 58 degrees Celsius, and that's after hours on end of Karoo RAM test. I'd consider that a good result to say the least, especially as I recorded these temperatures at an overclock setting using 1.5 volts. Okay, so speaking about overclocking, I'd recently gone through at least two sets of highly impressive 16 gigabit 8-die memory sets, one targeting the low-end price-conscious buyer and the other one on the opposite end of the spectrum. This XPG Lancer Neon kit sits somewhere in the middle of these two offerings, and it offers what typically good 8-die memory can. However, it pairs that with awesome looks, and this combination is what XPG is bringing with the Lancer Neon RGB memory. I've already spoken about overclocking, so I may as well continue here. These kits are available in both AMD and Intel systems, and in fact, the 7200 kit here is labeled for Intel XMP 3.0 out the box, even though it does have an Expo profile as well. This is understandable because DDR5 7200 leaves you in essentially no man's land when it comes to the AM5 platform. Fortunately, you can do DDR5 6400 CL28 at 1.45 volts and DDR5 8000 CL38 at exactly the same voltage. So you have plenty of options here if you're an AMD user, even if you can't necessarily benefit from DDR5 7200. On the Intel side of things, which is where I prefer to test memory of course, is where you'll find a sweet spot of DDR5 8200 CL36 but using 1.5 volts, which is what I'd consider still safe for everyday use. At this setting in XMP is where I tested the memory. And speaking about testing, let's get on with the performance figures. As usual, testing was done on the Intel Core Ultra 7 265K, cooled by the ROG Ryujin 3 360 ARGB Extreme. The motherboard used was the ROG Maximus Z890 Apex with both the 1401 and 1602 beta BIOS. The GPU, of course, was the ROG Strix GeForce RTX 4080, and the PSU, of course, was the XPG Fusion 1600W ATX 3.0 PSU. First up, we have IDA 64. From the default DDR5 6400 spec of the 265K CPU, where DRAM copy figures are 93 GB a second, we see 126 GB a second when overclocked to 8200 CL36. That's a 35% increase in performance. From 6400 to XMP 7200, the difference is not as large, where XMP setting is offering just an 8% boost in performance instead. In memory latency, we see a 12.5% reduction going from DDR5 6400 to the overclocked DDR5 8200 setting. This is probably more telling in gaming performance differences than bandwidth figures alone, as you'll see soon. So, talking about gaming, we move on to Hitman World of Assassination. XMP offers a sizable gain in performance at these settings, but the overclocked 8200 setting offers a 16% better average frame rate and a massive 45% increase in the 1% lows. A great performance uplift whichever way you look at it. Next is Forza Horizon 5, a game that I've previously stated doesn't scale as much with DRAM tuning. That being said, it does show scaling similar to Hitman in the average frame rates, where the 8200 setting offers a 15% performance increase in average frame rates even XMP offering a reasonable performance gain here of 10%. Next up is Marvel Spider-Man 2, where we start to see a pattern. I'd reiterate again that this 8200 CL36 setting is easy enough to achieve and should be possible on just about every single set of this memory. That said, we see another 16% performance improvement from DDR5 6400 to 8200 in the average frame rates, which has increased to 23% when looking at the 1% lows. In Dragon Age the Veilguard, and to nobody's surprise at this point, we see once again the overclocked 8200 setting is running away with it, offering a familiar 16% performance uplift over the default 6400 setting. Where the 1% lows are concerned, the difference is even more pronounced at 31% to the overclocked setting. Finally, we moved on to the synthetic tests, where we see Geekbench 6 shows a 6% performance boost between 6400 and 8200. XMP here doesn't do much, which is unlike in Geekbench 3's memory test, where XMP and the overclocked 8200 setting deliver a 7 and 15% performance advantage over the 6400 default setting. In SuperPi 32M, we see one of the lowest performance gains at just 5% between the fastest and lowest settings. This is similar to V-Ray 6 CPU render benchmark, where the overclocked 8200 setting offers 3% more performance than the DDR5 6400 setting, which is not too different from what we see when looking at Handbrake encoding, which also shows a 3.5% performance uplift between 6400 and 8200. With the performance figures covered, it's clear that the Neon kit is capable in as far as 8-die memory is concerned. I'm convinced that others will do much better, while few, if any, will struggle with any of these settings I've shown here, at least on a 2-DIMM board like the Apex I've used. As I stated earlier, AMD users can use this memory as well without much tuning. A simple switch to CL28, 6400 or 8000 CL38 is easy enough at just 50 millivolts more. Subtimings is something you'll have to tune for yourself because, let's face it, at this point we are all familiar with what a die can do here. Above all, this kit is about visuals, and I'd imagine it works equally well in any build. The heatsink lighting stands out for me above everything else. Where styling is concerned, there aren't any other DRAM kits I'm aware of that have as much lighting. This memory set looks better in the flesh than it does on screen, and I for one look forward to more kits like this from XPG, even if it's from their other lines. Anyway, let me know what you guys think of the XPG Lancer Neon RGB kit in the comments below. And until the next time, please take great care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the flip side, and peace.